Hey everyone, time to kick off another exciting edition of our DevOps office hours. It is May 10th, 2023. My name is Eric Osterman and I'll be your host. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We help teams conquer AWS using our rock solid Terraform blueprints. Whether you're starting from scratch or just not happy with your current setup, book a session with me, go to cloudposse.com/quiz and I can show you what well-run infrastructure looks like. For those of you new here, don't worry, our format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. If you're curious about Cloud Posse or any of our open source tools or modules, this is a great place to ask. For those of us joining through the podcast or YouTube channel, we host these calls every week, so don't miss out. You can register for these live at cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. Our call today is recorded. We'll post a recording of the session to our YouTube channel. So if you want to help and support what we do over here, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. Head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/cloudposse. So that's just a reminder. If you find anything here you like, that's a great place to go to find the recording so you can share it with your team and get everybody on the same page. So some announcements. The first announcement here was one I saw through the weekly Terraform newsletter, weekly.tf. And it's a perfect follow-up for a tool that we talked about last week called TPM, which was a Terraform provider manager. Well, this extensive write-up talks all about the different ways of using local provider caches and how to benefit from it. So if you're using the other tool to download a cache of providers, this is how you can configure your projects to use them. The next announcement was a small one. Matt, you shared this one, just that AWS Backup has rolled out to 4 additional regions. So if you're in Asia Pacific, or Europe, or you have more access to cross-region backups. This is pretty awesome. Doing cross-region backups is obviously for DR purposes, business continuity, and not having to whip up your own apparatus to do that is nice. Just a reminder, the cross-regional application, that's been around for a while. This was just adding it to some more regions. Another one here is AWS open sourced a fuzzing tool called SnapChange. And I didn't know about this technique of, I know about fuzzing. I didn't know about the strategy that is now kind of like the cutting edge of fuzzing tools. So the problem with fuzzing is, of course, you got to be able to identify and be able to reach all those opportunities where user-defined input could affect the outcome of the application. And that can be kind of hard for a fuzzing tool to figure out. So what this does is it's literally taking snapshots of the runtime of some app, I guess using virtual machine type technology, and then it's able to manipulate, I guess, in memory, certain areas of the application running to make sure that things are validated. Matt, do you know more about something like this? You're probably good.
I don't have a lot of insight as to how this works, unfortunately, so I don't know.
So yeah, this is interesting. Then in the same vein, Amazon has officially now published the code behind Cedar Policy. It was announced a while back and the website was online. What I can't find out anywhere is why do we need Cedar? And like the elephant in the room is Rego. So not even acknowledging it anywhere when Rego is like become an industry standard for policy languages, frustrated me because that would help me understand this a little better. Anyone know more?
Cedar is gonna be used for Amazon verified permissions, which is still in preview and will be launching sometime in the future. Talk to your Tam if you want more details. So that's like where AWS is using it. Why they're using it there, I think they have some blog posts explaining their reasoning, but I cannot share an opinion.
I can see that. I mean, so the way you described it, and from maybe from my recollection, is this is how you will be able to extend extend policies outside of AWS, or that would work maybe with other clouds. Is that accurate? Or how would you describe what you just said? Verified permissions.
Amazon Verified Permissions. It's a service from AWS that was announced at reInvent. Like, it's a totally new service. It's very similar to also, if you're familiar with it. And that Amazon Verified Permissions is in preview, so I don't know anything about it and cannot comment on it.
Okay. Same here. Yeah. So from my armchair, I thought it had something to do with things outside of AWS. And if that is the case, I could understand why they're trying to find something kind of non-proprietary to define the policy language around that.
Amazon Verified Permissions is gonna use Cedar to define the policies that they use to see what your application has access to. So Verified Permissions is basically, it's way easier if you go to the also.cloud website, I think it is. Like, AWS is not good at marketing, let's just admit that. It's basically doing not the authentication, but the authorization for your app. So which users have access to what, and how does that work? And it's integrated with IAM and AWS Audit and all that, or at least that, no, OSO.
Okay.
It's another startup that's doing some fascinating things. Oh no, it's osohq.something.com.
Yeah.
I shared the link in the chat.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. No, go to their homepage. They have pretty graphics that explain it better. So the idea is every single company has to implement authorization in their app. So think stuff like teams, like user roles, like who has access to what. And that's annoying, and everybody has to do it, is the exact undifferentiated heavy lifting that AWS loves to help out. So they decided to build Amazon Verified Permissions to do that. It's
Gotcha.
Expectations are high for the service because it's gonna be like, hey, now you can have authorization in your app, and it's guaranteed by AWS, and it's auditable and stuff. Like, it's not gonna be your implementation. Also is a competitor. They're doing some really fascinating things and have a lovely product. Verified Permissions is gonna launch sometime in the future, and we're all gonna get to see how it performs and how it compares with also. And yeah, Cedar is the language that you use to define those policies of who has access to what, under what conditions, and whatever. Some really talented folks at AWS have moved to the Cedar team, so it's interesting where that's gonna go.
Did also, however you say it, did they come up with their own policy language as well, or are they based on another open standard?
I honestly have no idea. I highly doubt they're using Cedar. It seems like they're using
I actually think they're using a Google thing under the hood, if I remember correctly. What is that thing called? Let's see. Is that it? Or I think they based it on, it's the Zanzibar. I think that's the thing that they based it on, which is Google's like authorization.
Is it OPA, or is that a different thing?
It's a different thing altogether. That's what Eric was talking about, was Rego.
Rego
is that's the policy language for OPA. But this is something different.
This is saying something about the Polar programming language to express logic and policies.
Yeah.
It's also telling that Rego is still horrible to write, and that two major products that could have used Rego decided to build their own thing.
Yeah, although specifically, like, I think specifically like the complex state changing in Rigo is pretty bad. Like it gets hairy, I should say, to try to write those policies and compare it. And I'm not sure it fits that greatly into like an RBAC strategy, but maybe someone would prove me is wrong.
So could I redefine then also in this verified permissions in my layman's terms, then could it almost be like AWS Cognito is how you authorize users to get to your app. This is how to authorize users inside of your app.
There's
Yes.
There's authentication and authorization. So I think that Cognito is probably doing authentication pretty well, and it tells you who you are. But then the idea of once you've been identified is what specifically can Eric do in this application, and it's often a lot of complex logic, like, can I edit this project? Can I create this thing? Can I delete a certain thing? And basically the idea is that you write policy around that external to your application, and then your application developers just call an API that says, here's the user, here's the function we're providing, is that authorized? And it will give back an authorization decision, and you can manage those decisions outside of complex like application code and in a policy language instead. I think that's what both of these are trying to achieve at a high level.
Great, makes sense. Thank you.
And I think, Vlad also gave the TLDR of that. Yeah. So auth-n versus auth-z, that's exactly what we're talking about here, but I never say anything that succinctly whenever I start talking.
Yeah, so just to say it even or more clearly, so Cognito maps to auth-n and or authorization, and verified permissions maps to auth-z or authorization. Yeah.
Although it gets a little tricky when you get into some of those things, especially with SAML, because and OIDC, like, so SAML assertions and OIDC claims are actually starting to touch into that auth-z world of saying, like, this person can do these things because they have these claims, and basically, so the line is blurred a little bit, but I think separating them that way makes it cleaner for sure if you can do it that way. But then figuring out all those other things, I guess we'll see how this all evolves as they start to go together.
Cool. All right. Next announcement was, GitHub announced that they are now auto blocking pushes that contained a set of 69 patterns that it identifies for vulnerable tokens. The way it was implemented was by just making GitHub down so you can't push at all. And that's what's been going out for the last 2 days. No, my poor humor. Nice. Has anybody been as frustrated as our team? We haven't been able to get anything done for the last 2 days. I used to be very frustrated with CodeFresh that it was always down. Now I realize it's just CICD SaaS platforms.
Do you know if this auto blocking will, like if it sees a false positive and it blocks the false positive, but you don't want it to, is it going to have an override of some kind?
I think if you force push, it still goes.
If force pushing is enabled on the repository or the branch, I guess.
Correct.
Or follow this URL to allow the secret. Okay. That works, I guess.
Oh, okay.
One thing I noted about your comment around CI/CD platforms being down is we had a bit of a problem with GitHub Actions. Even though we're using self-hosted runners, because the Actions APIs got screwy, we had quite a few get into a bad state in the Actions Runner controller that we had to like manually clean up. So yeah, pretty frustrating. We got hit with that the last 2 days.
Yeah,
You can always pay the tax and get self-hosted enterprise, and you can host it much better than the GitHub team can do, I'm sure.
No thanks.
Yeah, I think that if we examine the scope of GitHub and how many people rely on it and everything else, I know it's frustrating for sure, but like keeping a service like that up and running and 100% available seems like an extremely daunting task given everything I know in this world. So they do a pretty good job, although recently we've had a lot of like small blips and outages and things, but I just wonder if who could do a better job, I guess, is the question I keep coming up with. Maybe the answer is rely less upon their stuff for everything, because we put a lot of eggs in the GitHub basket.
Well, one would dream that they would decentralize more of it. I know that that's some of the way that Slack approaches things, right? And while Slack still goes down, generally Slack goes down over content delivery, so CDN or login and authentication. But I've definitely had days where the Slack outage doesn't affect me because I'm already logged in and I've already downloaded most of the content. So I'm actually even able to write stuff. And I think that there's a lot of web applications that are going to where, you can do stuff locally on the browser. And I know that GitHub lets you actually have an in-browser editor. Maybe one of these days they're just going to make it a light version of Enterprise. I don't know if anybody's heard of anything like that, but it'd be cool if GitHub let you just say, hey, pay just a little bit and just host my stuff separately, kind of a thing. That'd be nice.
It's GitHub AE or something. They have a preview for like a hosted enterprise, or they had one. I'm not up to date with it. I was chatting with an org that wanted GitHub Enterprise, but they don't want to host it, and there was a thing that was in preview.
Yeah, I know they actually used to offer that. They definitely used to offer it, and then they pulled it back, and I wonder if they're going down that road again.
Basically, it's your own dedicated cluster or something managed by them.
Yeah, it's basically just data. It's basically just like data siloing. So they host your entire like GitHub Enterprise like for you.
I wonder if it's going to give you any fault tolerance. Is it just data?
Yeah, I don't know how they're doing it, but I mean, GitHub is still pretty famously like a Rails monolith. So I'm sure there's like a lot of that having, has to do with some of these outages is that they haven't broken them up into pieces that are more easily like scalable and manageable. But
I mean,
that's
Slack
probably
is
a much bigger task.
Slack is just LAMP, right? I think even to this day, I think maybe they changed it recently, but
I mean, I'm not sure that you can actually compare like what Slack is doing versus what GitHub is doing. I mean, they're like legitimately like the scale of what they're doing is like orders of magnitude more complex and orders of magnitude more users that are doing it on both of those things. I mean, they're running like customer workloads to build things and actions, and they have all sorts of crap going on there. So I don't know if it's a fair comparison, but it's just a highly complex system.
A LAMP stack?
I don't think so. I think
I mean, it used to be. I have not fact checked that in a while, but I do remember when I was originally looking at it back in the 20 teens. I remember there being a write-up of how they just had effectively automated LAMP.
Interesting. So it looks like it was
Slack. I think is React. Actually, I think that's actually an Electron app that loads on your. Oh,
I was speaking of the back end.
Desktop now. Oh, backend. Got it.
Yeah. Just thinking on the with respect to fault tolerance, right? But yeah.
All right. Well, let's see here. Next announcement is a small one. If you're one of the few like me still using Evernote, then this is exciting, collaborative editing. Not for the reason this is titled. I don't use my journal notes with other people, but I always get duplicate notes in Evernote. It's been affecting me for 10 years. I'm hoping that this idea that you can collaborate on notes would therefore also eliminate the problem of duplicate notes, but that's just, maybe wishful thinking. At the same time this came out, I was also super excited to stumble across another project, Obsidian. In the Q&A, I have a question, but I can maybe start it now. I'm just curious, anybody here been using Obsidian for some amount of time? It seems really rad. I look at it like the VS Code of note-taking, meaning it works the same on my phone or tablet or workstation, and it supports plugins on all those platforms. So plugins on mobile as well as plugins on the desktop. And there's an ecosystem of over 100 different plugins, almost 1,000 different plugins for Obsidian as well. So it seems too good to be true. Just curious if anyone's actually using it.
Yeah, I use Obsidian pretty much daily because a lot of my note-taking is in text documents and text documents that are inside repos. And I like the fact that I have what I want to say, like a console, so to speak, a graphical console that's independent of the way that I enter the text and the way that I revision the text. It's like totally separate from both of those. So I can do a lot of things with this Obsidian that I can't do with other apps.
How are you storing your vaults? Are you just using your local file system? Are you using the Git plugins?
Yeah, I'm just doing local file system for now. I haven't gotten to like using it on mobile or across sites or, different devices, that type of thing. So I'm only on one device. So yeah, I'm not really using any sort of replication or anything like that.
Gotcha.
Not using Obsidian, but in this class is logsec, which I actually picked up out of the ThoughtWorks radar that you showed a couple weeks back. I've been using logsec for about 2 weeks now. I really like it. It's one of the big competitors. It's open source, whereas Obsidian is not.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Obsidian is not open source in the purest sense. It's free. It's a restricted license, right? Or
I don't know the exact license, but it's not open source.
Okay. I guess, yeah, probably Obsidian Core might not be. It's just all the plugins are open source probably. Oh, this is really interesting. Logsec, connect your notes, increase your understanding.
It's got the Git integration. It's got the whiteboard. It's comparable. Yeah, I'm liking it so far. I've been using it for about 2 weeks. I was using VS Code Dendron plugin for a while, but it's a little clunky.
What's the plugin? How do you spell it?
The other one I was using, not logsec, but there was another one I was using called Dendron, which is another markdown. It has a plugin, DENDRON. And it also has like the graph map and it uses markdown. It has a automatic GitHub publisher and some stuff, but it's not quite as sleek as like an Obsidian or a logsec.
I've been using Notes GPT. It actually just takes all my notes for me. It's awesome.
Nice.
I'm just kidding.
Joking aside, though, they have multiple GPT plugins for Obsidian. I saw that can help you generate your content, your outline. Even
there's multiple VS Code plugins too. That's like explain this code, improve this code, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my one of my friends was showing me something couple nights ago where he uses Notion pretty heavily, and Eric and I have had a lot of discussion about this note-taking thing, but he's bought into the whole Notion thing, and he has this thing set up where in his Notion notes he jots down like ideas about things, and then uses like a combination of Notion AI, Zapier, and OpenAI, and it will like give him, like, he'll be like, I need to write a blog post about this, and then right in his notes it will automatically like insert in, here are some possible topic ideas you could do for this, and it like spits it in every time he takes his notes, which is pretty cool. Like how where we're starting to go with these integrations of tools. So I've been excited to see how that all works, but that also means that something is reading all of his notes.
I was just going to mention, I love that some of the tools are built more around particular types of users, like the Goblin.tools is designed for people with ADHD and executive dysfunction. So they actually, you put 2 B's in there. It actually is more for folks who just need the AI to just do a small thing, but not everything. Yeah, it's got 2 sides of it. If you have a to-do list, it can break them down into other items by putting a run-on sentence. And then if you write a paragraph, there's the compiler tab that lets you write an entire, just throw your brain down on a text box, and then it elaborates into a flow of to-dos. But it's, something
Click the magic one thingy, Eric. On the go grocery shopping on the right side to the left of the 3 dots, there's a magic one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there.
Click on that.
Okay.
But in this case, it's only going to have the context of 3 words. So you can imagine.
Yeah, that's interesting. Helps you kind of break down a bigger, basically a big problem into a smaller problem of steps, and then you can decide which of those are relevant and add your own.
Yeah.
Could you write get rich and retire in there, and then click that little thing? I want to follow this.
I'm interested too. And you can just keep clicking magic wands.
This is way too much work.
As a counterpoint to all of these things, I've been chatting with Matt and Matt in the Zoom chat. Most of my notes are not text. They could be converted to text, but they're not text. So my notes are stuff like, "Ooh, this blog post is relevant. I'm gonna save it. Ooh, this YouTube reInvent talk is talking about service X, and I know I'm gonna need to reference the details that they're sharing in the video. I'm gonna save this, generate a transcript, and then when folks ask me something, I'm just gonna paste the link and things like that." So I don't use Obsidian or anything like that, because it's not. I don't work with text. I work with blog posts and tweets and quizzes.
So what do you use? That begs the question.
I'm using reinvented software. Keep it. It's basically a lighter alternative to DevOps. If you're familiar with it, it works. Yeah, no, just type reinvented software before it.
Have you used the Miro whiteboard or?
Give me a moment.
The LogSec has a whiteboard that's like that, where you can like paste like links and YouTubes and stuff.
I've been using. I'm gonna get there in a second. So I've been using Keep It since 2017-ish, 2018-ish. I cannot remember. I've been super happy with it, but my database is now a couple of terabytes, and it's not ideal.
Yeah,
like I just started using it. I had no idea I wanted to use it. It's basically no structure in there, and I want to reorganize it. And I have to reach out to the developers. They have awesome support. You can just email them, because I want to figure out exactly how to organize stuff. Like the app still works fine, for what I do, which is mostly like searching by tags. But I fear that they only support syncing with iCloud right now, and iCloud has a 4 terabyte limit, and I'm at, I don't know, 2 point something terabyte just in keep it, which is not ideal. So maybe I'll move to DevOps, which is overkill for me. But yeah,
although
as an alternative approach to text note.
So Obsidian, for what it's worth, has multiple web clipper and other plugins that will actually let you go to a website, say, save this as a note, and it will actually take like all the HTML, render it, and put it into Markdown, or you can have it just store the link for you automatically. You can do the same thing with tweets, with a bunch of other things. So there are definitely other ways. Like, it isn't strictly for text as you would imagine it.
They also have the Canvas plugin, which gives you that mirror like feature as well.
Yeah, you can save the data, but I'm still I'm not using the relationships, I'm not using the graph, I'm not using anything, because I'm just doing vanilla search.
Mm-hmm.
So when
it might be worth looking into.
When you save the web links, is it like the web clipper in Evernote? It has a full offline copy of it.
Yep. You can choose, depending on which one you want, which one you use. You can choose to either do that or just like render it live, like an iframe kind of thing.
And they have OCR for stuff like images, which is super helpful because I take screenshots of slides in Zoom talks and just send them in here. It's been working great.
Cool.
So
on my radar. So thanks for sharing.
So something small to add to this. In the past, I've used a lot of tools like this to manage web apps, and I recently came across the fact that you can turn on a flag for being able to save tab groups in Chrome, which has helped me to organize my tabs and then put them into my bookmarks bar for later. And that's made it to where I don't necessarily have to make a whole bunch of hobbled notes of here's these links I need to remember, and this is these things that I'm going to lose. Instead, I can sort of keep them in the browser a little bit longer. But you have to enable it in Chrome flags. But then when you do that, then you can save groups instead of just having to lose them when you close the browser. Yeah,
you'd be surprised how often a tweet or a YouTube video gets deleted.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. That's, I mean, honestly, I don't usually use social media for that sort of information, but I mean, I can respect the fact that there are more, we'll say, volatile sources of information on the internet than others. So,
Vlad, are you saying Keep It stores videos as well, like a YouTube video? It stores it for offline.
I'm downloading the video with YouTube DL and just putting it in Keep It. It accepts whatever files you want. There are files that you can do OCR on, like images, PDF stuff. I don't think they do anything for videos. I usually just, what do I do with videos? I get the automatic transcript from YouTube, or put them in Amazon Transcribe or whatever.
And there's a mobile app.
It is a paid app, for the record, with I don't know how much the subscription is.
Gotcha. Cool. Before I move on, any last questions or thoughts on these topics? All right, that was collaborative editing. So as we talked about last week, there were a lot of breaking changes as a result of upstream things Amazon did for disabling the ability to use ACLs on US3 buckets. We got a lot of feedback from people. This had to get fixed. We were feeling it as well. So Jeremy helped us out and quickly got on updating these popular modules with new releases. to account for that. Also related, and let's see, do we still have Jeremy Grodberg here or no? We do not. I saw there was a question in the office or in the Zoom chat here regarding the TF state backend module. I tried the TF state backend module, but the only way I could get it to work properly the way I wanted it to was creating a small project. All right, we'll get to that in the Q&A portion. I'll get through the rest of the announcements here. Because somebody had to do it. Somebody created a Terraform provider for ChatGPT. I think it's just a gimmick. Maybe this is a great example of, or, you know, if you need to do some senseless example for Terraform code, maybe how to do it. But I'm guessing it still needs an API token, so you can't even use it for hello world examples. But there's some examples here, and it's pretty much what you would expect. You can have a prompt and get an answer. I don't. All right, last announcement.
Maybe you can ask it. You can ask it what kind of pizza you wanted to order with the other Terraform provider that orders pizza.
Exactly. So if you are indecisive using the Terraform Domino's provider, this can provide that clarity. Perfect. All right. Next, last announcement was really also from the weekly TF newsletter. It was an argument for why Terraform projects do well in a monorepo, and he lists some of the requirements here. One of them, no additional tools will be used, stands out. You know, your mileage may vary. I haven't read too closely through the example, but one of the things that stands out, and this is the problem with all of these examples, and you got to keep your examples honest. It makes a lot of sense with no additional tools when you just have live and you just have a bunch of directories here with some Terraform files. But when you say omitted for brevity in every other example, and you don't say how to address that, that's why you need those other tools. So when you realize that you need those other tools, you know, that's where tools like TerraGrunt come in, or obviously Atmos. Highly recommend you check out Atmos. It's how we do monorepos with Terraform in a very efficient, dry manner.
Well, I think that the author in this case particularly was advocating for not being dry, like actually having copies of everything for every. I don't think he actually mentions it, but I'm actually saying, like, I think that diagram is specifically showing you that you've repeated the configuration for every place you want to do it in those directories.
Oh, I got you. Okay, fair point.
Yeah, and then that's why he omitted it for brevity. I would argue that it makes it much harder to work from a developer experience perspective in there, and also make changes and environment parity and a bunch of other things. But it's certainly one way of doing it, and it works. Yeah. But
so basically promoting this code to this other directory path as a you know, snapshot. I can I can respect that as a strategy. It would make those promotions, if they're done as pull requests, horrible to review. And that's why I don't like it. It's tantamount to code generation, which is why I don't like that pattern. But I can respect the idea of wanting to have an immutable copy in staging and an immutable copy in production. The other thing, though, I don't like about it, and it's a common pattern that you see in monorepos for Terraform, is when you make a change in dev, it's not in isolation. And what I mean is, it is in isolation, it should be, but the change you are making is with the intention of that going to staging, with the intention of that going to production. And you should see what the blast radius is of making that change across all your environments as you're opening that pull request, I think. Instead of leaving it up to a surprise, let's see what happens when I merge this into main and what happens on staging. That I don't like that surprise. All right.
I've started thinking one of the biggest drawbacks, I think that, and I understand why it does it, but I think one of the drawbacks that Terraform in particular suffers from is that the way that we all work with it in its general form is that we treat the Git tag as the, you know, in the actual code itself as the artifact, where if we were actually publishing artifacts, like publishing the modules like out of like a monorepo to some you know module store and individually tagging them and versioning them and doing all of those things, it would make it a lot easier to actually work with Terraform in a monorepo, because then you could explicitly opt into specific versions that you want to pin specific environments to, as you're testing and walking through the, you know, your hierarchy, and making changes to main has less impact than it does with the way that most people use it.
Makes sense to me what you say. Yeah.
That's something that I do with a bunch of customers. It's copy-paste based Terraform, which sounds silly at big scale, but if you only have, I don't know, 20, 30 environments, it's just annoying. And if you have 5, it's like super okay, nobody cares. And it's really, really easy to upscale people on it. Like, hey, you did this change in the dev folder, now copy-paste that and do it. Well, not copy-paste it, like modify the module tag to be, instead of v1.0.0 to be v1.0.1 or whatever.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I don't host the modules in the same GitHub repository. They're just horrible. No, modules get their own GitHub repo with releases and tagging and all that. And just all the Terraform code is in one repository. And again, it works for small environments, and it's super easy to learn how it works.
All right. Thanks for that.
Also, 2 other news. I posted the links again in the Zoom and in the Slack thingy. AppSync now supports private APIs. So APIs that can be, GraphQL APIs that can be accessed only from your VPC. This is nice. It's gonna be even nicer and way more awesome when the, what's it called? AppSync merged APIs thing is launched, which is basically GraphQL Federation. So that's, and they, of course, because AWS is very bad at announcing things, they announced on GitHub that the team is working hard on getting that out, but they didn't share a date. So I'm excited about this one. And the other one was Actions Runner Controller public beta. I don't know what this is exactly, because I thought this was already public.
Yeah. So I think, is this related to the link you shared, Matt Calhoun? Yeah. So I realized this week that, or last week, that the repos were starting to move around. So Yusuke, or Momoshu, as many know him, started with some other folks, the Actions Runner Controller. Now that has been moved into GitHub's own official repository called Actions, and it's available here. So I guess that's in line with then these other announcements now that it's, you know, kind of officially been adopted by GitHub, and the documentation is now hosted on GitHub's own doc site.
Yeah, and it actually looks like they've been making some improvements to it, and a lot of other people have, well, several other people have contributed. I don't know, I will say a lot, but several.
Yeah. That's cool. So this goes to what Alex Siegman was saying earlier, with the API instability on GitHub and that GitHub Actions rely on, even if you're using self-hosted runners. We've also observed customers having problems with their runners not picking up new workloads after there's been some sort of a API issue at GitHub.
Can anybody comment on their reliability or the uptime of GitLab, whether hosted yourself or the hosted version nowadays? It's been a while since I've heard anybody talk about it, so I've wondered if it's still something that people lean on for their business.
We do and love it.
Who was that?
Dan.
Oh, hey, Dan.
Hey. Yeah, we host it and we have full control. It's completely blocked off from the outside world, and we wouldn't go any other way.
Have you done multiple major upgrades of GitLab?
Yeah, we keep it up. Yes, most of the time. We may be one behind. I think just a couple of days ago, another update came out.
And those updates have been pretty straightforward for your team to operate?
Yeah, I've talked to some people who had some problems, but that's when you you fall way back, and then for some reason, if you try to not do them gradually, sometimes some of my friends have had problems. We have some people that keep it up and have no problems at all. Just one thing I can remember that was a pain, but that's because we changed the code.
Gotcha. Well, for what's worth, it does come up in my calls with people maybe 5% of the time, but yeah, still a pretty small market share, at least of the people who reach out to Cloud Posse.
I appreciate the feedback on that one. Yeah.
All right, let's see. That's the end of announcements. Q&A. We got to my question on Obsidian users, so thanks for chiming in there.
I dropped one more link.
Okay.
They made a call for submissions for GitHub Universe yesterday.
All right. Let's see.
I don't know if you covered that already.
So if you want to talk at the GitHub Universe conference, they're accepting proposals for talks. Thanks for sharing. I'll post it in the office hours channel as well. All right, so then it brings us to Dan's question. Let me bring it up here and post it as a oops. All right. So Dan asks, I tried the TF state backend module, but the only way I got it to work properly and the way I wanted it was creating a small project just to create the backend storage for storage and DynamoDB, and then using a second main project that uses the backend created by the first project. Doing this way, I can destroy it. Exactly. So that's the right thing. I call that hierarchical backends. You will inevitably have this cold start problem trying to manage resources that Terraform itself depends on. You could, if you didn't like that, you can use like TerraGrunt, which creates the state backend for you. What I don't like about that approach is then you don't have control over the underlying resources and how they're created, managed, and so forth, other than what's exposed by the tool itself. So I think it's a sufficient or acceptable wart. Or you could do a little bit of both. You could use TerraGrunt to create like your main, the apex of your state backends so that you can create the rest of your backends using Terraform with our module. What Cloud Posse does is exactly what you're doing. We publish it under Cloud Posse, Terraform AWS components. And our backend is defined here, TF state backend. And we do what you're doing.
Yeah, okay, got it. Thanks very much.
In your case, since you're a GitLab user, you can use GitLab to manage the state backend that you use then to create the other backends.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I did notice that, but I did want to use your margin because I wanted to try it out.
Cool. I appreciate it. Yeah, some things we're working on with the Terraform state backend is supporting multi-region buckets, but that's proven to be a pretty challenging thing to do in a reusable sense, but we'll leave that for another day. So we got about 8 more minutes. More questions we can answer today.
I'm actually using a replica bucket, doing it in the same region, but that would probably work in a different region, right?
Yeah, the issue becomes when you look at it holistically between the lock tables and then also how the code or the systems switch over to using the other backend. In an ideal world, you could use the new endpoints. I forget what they're called, but you can have an endpoint that automatically points to the, I guess, available bucket, but Terraform does not work with that apparently, because we tried. The other issue we ran into was something related to, yes, in DynamoDB, the hashes in some way refer to the bucket, I think, something like that. And bucket names are, of course, globally unique. So your replica bucket has a different name. So that means the DynamoDB locks don't work. You'd have to wipe them out. And that's okay. But what's unfortunate about it is you lose, I don't recall from my memory. You lose some accounting that is nice to have when you still have the lock tables. Matt, do you remember?
I don't remember that specific thing, but the reason that it refers to the bucket names is because it hashes the entire, like, the key and the data to come up with that lock ID, and that's actually how it does it. So the key has the full bucket name in the key, and I think that's why, like, it plays into effect there.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
I don't know, my answer to this whole thing, I know it's not great from because you have to run another system, but if you really want to do this in multi-region, the best thing to do is probably to deploy like console and have a console server in each region, and then use console as the state backend, and then it does all that. It does all the heavy lifting and locking and everything else you need kind of under the hood for you, and deals with multiple instances in as many regions as you want to stick it in.
I think it's a fair solution, a good one. Yeah. We're our constraint is that we're trying not to install another vendor dependency, but especially if you're already have a console license, then it makes a lot more sense. Or if you're just building this, for your company, you don't have to build for others. That's a nice.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think you can do it all with the open source version of console. I don't think you need a paid version.
Eric Berg posts in the channel. Let me open up the link here. Link.
Hey guys.
Hey Eric, let me bring your message here. So you say, I'm having problems with incoming Cidrs using the AWS load-balancer-controller Helm chart deployed as a Helm release resource. I'm getting the list of IPs from the Cloudflare provider, which returns a list of Cidr blocks, but I can't seem to get the config. But I can't seem to get the escaping or whatever right. Keep getting invalid parsing the Cidrs. So let's see what's wrong here.
So I tried just passing in the string with, just quoted. Then I added escape quotes to see if that was it. This key value thing, this the 0/22, I believe that has to do with Helm's wrapping these values.
I think it's no. I honestly, I think it's the IPv6. It's not expecting.
It was happening before that too. I can change that real quick.
Actually, the error there says it can't end with comma. So it seems to think that your list is being truncated somehow, and that there's an entry.
Lines. When I am able to see the YAML before it gets deployed, that's what I see. I'm pretty sure it's that. So now I'm like, it's like, 80s shell escape whack-a-mole.
I wonder if whatever the variable type is of inbound Cidrs, the length of that
the string.
I'm thinking that the length of that is being exceeded and it's truncating your string.
That makes sense too. It could be.
That's what I thought too, but yeah.
I cut you off, but have you just tried reducing the size of your list and seeing if there's a point at which it starts failing?
Yeah, and it wasn't failing with the list, but that's easy to try. I've done 90 things since then. Feel like a whole different world now. Anyway, I'll try that, see what I can come up with that.
Did you post, like, is this a public endpoint where you're getting this from or something?
The Cloudflare thing?
Yeah. Or is this particularly coming from like something in?
No, it's Cloudflare provider.
So I see. It's on there. I see it.
Just want to lock down the load balancers to those guys. So yeah, this is one of those.
I get it.
Taking a really long time to finish.
Another potential workaround is you could create the security group somewhere else and pass the controller just a security group, I think.
I was going to do that, but the controller creates two security groups, and one of them always had when it went that route, the shared one always had zeros, just let everybody in. So
did you have Scheme internet facing? If you have Scheme internet facing, it should add the zero, but
right, and it is, and it does, but what I want, and I've gotten it to do with the default HTTP backend. I actually got that to work. I've got a security group with at least all the IPv6 stuff. I mean IPv4 stuff, but I don't know.
Did you try Scheme internal? That should not add the zero.
Well, yeah, but then our customers will be a little disappointed. I think that
you're trying to whitelist a public endpoint. Is that the use case?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
He's trying to lock down his public endpoint so that only his Cloudflare instances can talk to his load
Sorry,
balancer.
I missed the beginning. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Also, that thing is a string. Are you sure it doesn't want a list of -one cider dash the other cider? You have to do a bunch of transforms.
90% of the examples use a string, and the API docs use a string, but they only give one value. But it's just like colon, the cider. I was thinking of doing that, turning that into YAML lists. See if I can stick it in that way.
Oh, wait, what was is that the name of the Helm value, incoming Cidrs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's ALB ingress Kubernetes IO inbound Cidrs.
But that's the Helm chart input? You said you,
The Helm chart input is it's an annotation, so goes on my services. So I just
the underlying data type is a list of strings inside the actual like inbound, inside the actual load balancer controller.
Yeah, I tried wrapping it in square brackets too. I think I'm not sure what the right Helm way to do to set up, to pass in a list and get the the list of items in there, but shouldn't be too hard. I think I'll try explicitly doing that now. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't see, I'm looking at the one on Artifact Hub. I don't know if this is the exact same one that I have installed, but I don't see inbound Cidr as one of their.
Yeah, so I just posted a link to the actual like ALB load balancer controller, and if you search in there for the variable, you'll actually see it's defined as a list of strings.
On the Helm chart.
On the actual load balancer controller itself. So I assume that then
I was trying to connect what you said to, is it on the Helm chart, right?
Yeah, I don't know which Helm chart you're using, but is it the official one?
Yeah, the official EKS chart.
All right, we are at time, folks. I've got to wrap things up here, but let us know what you come up with, Eric, if you get it working next week, okay?
Yeah. Thanks for your help.
Our pleasure. Well, thanks everyone for joining and participating today. If you haven't yet subscribed, go to youtube.com/cloudposse to get today's session and all future sessions. Connect with me on LinkedIn by going to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. And if you haven't yet registered, you can register for these live weekly office hour sessions at cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. Our newsletter is published every week. The links that we talk about here, some of them are syndicated out through the office hours newsletter, but to get the full list, you gotta attend. So go to newsletter.cloudposse.com to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your week and talk to you next week.
See you.